Kira Adiola had spent 5 weeks calling the CEO of Apex Dynamics a fashion emergency with legs. She had sent him to fetch printer paper. She had critiqued his work ethic to his face. She had once told him, in front of the entire break room, that he chewed too loudly, and that whoever raised him clearly prioritized love over table manners. He had laughed so hard he choked on his sandwich. She didn't understand why nobody else was laughing until the morning he walked onto a stage in a suit that looked like it was sewn by divine intervention, and 300 employees rose to their feet. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice deep and commanding, and nothing, like the man who had lost a staring contest with a vending machine last Thursday. "I'm Kong Jae-won, founder and CEO of Apex Dynamics." His eyes swept the room. Found her. And Kira Adiola, for the first time in 27 years, wished the floor would swallow her whole. But the floor didn't swallow her. What happened instead was so much worse. Welcome back to our channel, beautiful people. If you're new here, you just found your new addiction. We serve up heart-stopping love stories with drama, humor, and twists that will have you yelling at your screen. Subscribe, hit the bell, and buckle up, because this story is about to take you on a ride. 2 things happened the morning Kira Adiola started her internship at Apex Dynamics. First, she stepped through the revolving doors of the most prestigious tech firm in Chicago and felt something click into place behind her sternum, a quiet certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Second, a man in the ugliest polo shirt in North America tried to kill her with a filing cabinet. Watch out. Kira dove left. The metal drawer sailed past her ear, struck the wall, and embedded itself in the plaster, with a crack that echoed through the lobby like a starting pistol. She lay on the polished floor, staring at the ceiling, and thought, "Mom, if you can see me right now, I hope you're laughing." Her mother would have laughed. Grace Adiola had found humor in everything. Flat tires, burnt dinners, the chaos of raising a daughter alone while working double shifts. She'd laughed her way through life with a resilience that Kira had spent every day since her passing 3 years ago trying to honor. "Make me proud, baby girl." Those had been her last words. Not dramatic, not heavy. Just Grace being Grace. Kira carried them like a compass. A face appeared above her, sharp jaw, dark eyes wide with panic, black hair falling across his forehead in messy waves, absurdly handsome beneath the catastrophe of his outfit. The shirt was mustard yellow, wrinkled beyond salvation, with a coffee stain shaped like Texas splashed across the chest. It was the kind of shirt that made you question whether the wearer had lost a bet or simply lost the will to live. "Are you alive?" he asked, hand extended. "Unfortunately," Kira said, taking it. He pulled her up with surprising strength. "I am so sorry. That cabinet has been loose for weeks. I keep submitting maintenance tickets, but apparently preventing employee decapitation isn't a departmental priority." Clearly the company values natural selection. His grin was immediate, wide and bright and completely disarming. "I'm Jae-won," he said. Then a pause, a flicker behind his eyes. "I work in operations. Not administrative support, not management. Just operations, the vaguest possible word in corporate vocabulary." Kira filed it away. She had her mother's instinct for things that didn't add up. "Kira Adiola, finance intern." "I know," he said, then immediately looked like he wanted to swallow his own tongue. "I mean, I read the onboarding memo. I read all the memos. Very exciting stuff. Last week there was a 3-page document about microwave etiquette that genuinely changed my life. You read intern onboarding memos? In operations? I'm very cross-functional." She stared at him. He stared back, smiling the desperate smile of a man hoping charm would outrun logic. It wouldn't, but she let him think it did. "I need to find my supervisor," she said. "I'll walk you. Least I can do after the attempted homicide." As they walked through the open plan office, Kira noticed something peculiar. People reacted to Jae-won like deer sensing a predator. Subtle shifts in posture, conversations dying mid-sentence, eyes darting away the moment he turned his head. A woman at a reception desk straightened so fast she knocked over her pen holder. A man by the elevator jabbed the close door button repeatedly, as if escaping. Jae-won seemed oblivious. Or brilliantly performative. "That's the break room," he narrated cheerfully. "Best coffee, Worst gossip. That's the supply closet. We call it the crying room. And that, he dropped his voice to a whisper, is Barbara's domain. Barbara? Barbara from accounting. She controls the top shelf of the office refrigerator with iron authority. Never touch her yogurt. Never hold eye contact longer than 2 seconds. And if she offers you feedback, just nod slowly and back away. You're exaggerating. I am a survivor, telling you how to survive. He delivered her to Caroline Park's office, a glass-walled corner space where a sharp-featured woman in her 40s reviewed documents with the intensity of a surgeon. Good luck, Jae-won said, stepping back. Then, softer. I think you're going to be extraordinary here, Kira Adiola. He said it like a fact, not a compliment, like he'd already read the ending and was just waiting for her to catch up. Then he shoved his hands in his pockets and wandered off, whistling, looking like a man without a single responsibility in the world. Kira watched him turn the corner. Who are you? She thought. She had no idea how complicated the answer would be. Week 1 taught Kira 2 things. She was excellent at her job, and Kang Jae-won was a walking contradiction. He appeared at her desk every morning at 8:47 with 2 coffees. Never asked. Never explained. Just arrived, set down the cup, and dropped into a chair that had materialized from nowhere. Your daily caffeine offering, he announced Wednesday, sliding a cup toward her. Accept it as tribute. Tribute for what? For not reporting me to HR after the filing cabinet incident. The week is young. He brought her coffee and conversation and chaos. He reorganized the supply closet alphabetically. It's called optimization, Kira. Got into a heated argument with the break room toaster. You have one job, and somehow convinced Douglas, the 60-year-old security guard, to learn the electric slide during lunch. But beneath the clown act, things didn't add up. On Tuesday, Kira stayed late and found Jae-won in the server room at 7 p.m., reading technical infrastructure reports dense enough to tranquilize an engineer. Light reading? She asked from the doorway. He startled so hard he dropped the entire binder. Kira, these were misfiled. I'm returning them to the server room, where they already are? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I'm very thorough, he said weakly. Thursday, she spotted a sleek black car in the executive parking garage. The driver's door opened, and Jae-won emerged, in his terrible polo shirt, looking wildly out of place beside the vehicle's elegant lines. He saw her seeing him and froze. Nice car, she said. It's a rental. That's not a rental. It's a very fancy rental. Jae-won. Kira. She let it go. But the puzzle pieces were accumulating. Friday afternoon, she heard Caroline on the phone, speaking rapid Korean. Kira caught one word clearly, Ja-won, spoken with a deference that sounded almost nervous. Who's Caroline talking to about you? Kira asked him later. Me? He laughed too quickly. Why would Caroline be talking about me? I'm nobody. Nobody with access to server rooms, an executive parking pass, and a car that costs more than my annual salary? His smile didn't change, but something behind it shifted, a shadow crossing his eyes. Maybe I'm a corporate spy, he said lightly. Maybe I'm an undercover journalist. Maybe I'm secretly a Nigerian prince, and I need your bank details. If you're going to deflect, at least be original. I'm workshopping my material. Give me time. But later that day, she overheard a conversation in the elevator that planted a different seed entirely. 2 senior analysts, unaware she was standing behind them, heard the CEO's coming back next month. If he ever actually left. My buddy in IT said someone's been accessing executive files from inside the building. You think he's here? Like, undercover? Or it's corporate espionage. Could be a competitor. Could be anyone. Kira's mind raced. Corporate spy. Competitor plant. Undercover journalist. Or something else entirely. She thought about the way people flinched when Jae-won walked past. The car. The server room reports. Caroline's nervous phone calls. He was hiding something massive. But a CEO pretending to be a regular employee? That was absurd. Week 2 dissolved the professional boundaries she'd tried to maintain. It started with the project. Caroline assigned them to the same cross-departmental team, streamlining internal communications. J1's inclusion made no sense for someone in operations, and Caroline's tight-lipped non-explanation only deepened Kira's suspicions. But working with him silenced every question, because working with J1 was a revelation. He was brilliant, not casually smart, architecturally brilliant. His mind dismantled complex problems, like a master watchmaker disassembling a timepiece, each observation precise, each suggestion elegant. During their first working session, he restructured the entire proposal in 20 minutes, identifying systemic failures that 3 senior analysts had missed. "How do you see all this from operations?" Kira asked, staring at his whiteboard diagrams. "Operations gives you a bird's eye view. That's what a CEO would say." He laughed, but it was a half-second too late. Their project meetings bled into lunch hours, which bled into late afternoons in the crying room, which bled into evenings that neither of them wanted to end. The almost kisses started in week 3. The first happened in the printer room. The ancient machine jammed for the 4th time that day, and they both reached into the paper tray simultaneously. His hand landed on hers. They froze. Faces inches apart, the hum of the machine the only sound. Kira could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, could feel his breath warm against her lips. His gaze dropped to her mouth. Her heart stopped. The printer screeched to life, spitting paper directly into their faces. They jumped apart, covered in toner dust. The moment shattered. "That machine has the worst timing of any technology ever invented," J1 muttered, brushing paper off his shoulder. "The machine has bad timing," Kira replied, her cheeks burning. He looked at her, really looked at her. "I'm working on my timing," he said quietly. "I promise." The second almost kiss happened in the elevator. A power flicker, just 3 seconds of darkness, and suddenly they were standing close in the black, her hand gripping his arm instinctively, his breath in her hair. "Kira!" His voice was barely a whisper. "Yes?" The lights crashed back on. They were nose to nose. The elevator doors opened to reveal Barbara from accounting, holding a yogurt cup and staring at them with the expression of a woman who had just been handed premium gossip. "Don't," Kira warned. Barbara's lips pressed together. She stepped into the elevator without a word, but her eyes were screaming. The third almost kiss was the worst. The jazz club on a rainy Thursday, a corner booth, low lighting, his knee pressing against hers under the table, 5 hours of conversation that felt like 5 minutes. "Kira," he said, and his voice had changed, lower, raw, stripped of jokes. "I need to tell you something." Her pulse spiked. "Okay." He reached into his jacket pocket. His fingers closed around something. She caught a glimpse of laminated plastic, an ID badge, before he shoved it back down. "I'm not." He stopped, started again. "What you think I am." Stopped again. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and every trace of warmth drained from his face. "I have to take this," he said tightly. "I'm sorry." He stepped outside. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched him pace under the awning, speaking in clipped Korean, his free hand clenched into a fist at his side. When he came back, the moment was gone. Whatever he'd almost said had been swallowed back down. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Just work stuff." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Operations never sleeps. She walked to her car alone that night, replaying his words, his face, the ID badge he'd hidden. Back in her apartment, she pulled up the Apex Dynamics website on her laptop. She navigated to the leadership page. The CEO's photo was conspicuously absent, replaced by a corporate headshot silhouette, and the text, Kang Jae-won, founder and CEO. No photo. She searched Google Images. Every result was either blurred, taken from a distance, or obscured by sunglasses and event crowds. The man was a ghost in his own company. Deliberate, she realized. He'd scrubbed his image intentionally. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jae-won. "I had a really good time tonight." She typed, "Me too." Then, "You were going to tell me something." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I know. I'm trying. It's complicated." "Is it dangerous?" "Not for you. Never for you." She stared at the screen for a long time. "Good night, Jae-won." Good night, Kira Adiola. Sweet dreams. She dreamed about dark eyes and almost kisses, and the shape of a secret pressing against glass, trying to break through. Week 4 brought the shadows closer. Whispers had been circulating since Kira's first day, vague, fragmented, always just out of reach. Board meeting next month. Vivienne is pushing for. Can't believe she still has shares after what happened. Laurent woman is ruthless, I'm telling you. The name kept surfacing. Vivienne Laurent. Kira heard it in hallways, in the break room, in Caroline's tense phone conversations. On Monday, a business magazine appeared in the break room. Page 12 featured an article, Power Plays, Inside Apex Dynamics Boardroom Battle. Accompanying the text was a photo of a stunning French woman, razor cheekbones, crimson lips, eyes like polished steel, standing at a podium with the Apex logo behind her. Vivienne Laurent, board member and former fiancé of CEO Kang Jae-won, has been vocal about leadership changes at the tech giant. Former fiancé. Kira read the article 3 times, each pass tightening the knot in her stomach. Tuesday afternoon, she was passing Jae-won's desk, a regular desk in the operations area that she now suspected was pure theater, when his phone rang. He answered casually, but within seconds, his entire body changed, shoulders rigid, jaw locked, voice dropping to a controlled murmur. I've already given you my answer, Vivienne. No, that's not going to happen. Because it was never real, and you know it. Kira kept walking, but her hands were trembling. That evening, she found Barbara from accounting alone in the break room, eating yogurt with the methodical precision of a woman who viewed snack time as sacred ritual. Barbara, Kira said carefully, can I ask you something? Barbara regarded her with suspicious eyes. Depends. What do you know about Vivienne Laurent? Barbara's spoon stopped midair. She looked left, looked right, then leaned forward. I've been in this company's accounting department for 19 years, Barbara said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I've seen numbers that don't add up, transactions that smell wrong, vendor payments going to companies that are nothing but a name on paper. And every single trail, when I follow it far enough, leads to the same place. Where? To someone on that board, someone with a French accent and a grudge. Why haven't you reported it? Barbara's laugh was bitter. Reported it to who? She has allies everywhere. Anyone who's tried to challenge her has been pushed out or silenced. I've been keeping my own records for years, waiting for someone brave enough, or stupid enough, to actually use them. She fixed Kira with a look that was equal parts warning and hope. If that someone ever shows up, Barbara said quietly, I've got 17 years of receipts in a locked drawer. Second cabinet from the left. She returned to her yogurt, as if the conversation had never happened. Kira stood in the break room, her heart pounding, and thought about her mother. Make me proud, baby girl. Friday arrived like a storm front, all pressure and electricity, and the sense that something was about to break. The company-wide meeting had been announced 3 days earlier. Mandatory attendance. The CEO would address the staff for the first time in over a month. Big announcements pending. The conference hall was transformed. Professional lighting, stadium seating, a stage with a single podium flanked by enormous screens displaying the Apex logo. Kira sat front row. CEO's orders for all interns, Caroline had said with a strange expression, between Diana and Martin. I can't believe we're finally going to see him, Diana whispered. I've heard he's gorgeous. He's a CEO, Diana, not a rock star. In this economy? Same thing. The energy in the room was electric. 300 employees buzzing, shifting, craning their necks. Then the buzzing stopped. The side door opened, and security appeared first. 2 men in dark suits with earpieces, scanning the room with trained eyes. Behind them, Caroline Park and 3 senior executives, their faces carefully neutral. Then a figure in the doorway. Kira's vision tunneled. She watched him walk toward the stage, and her brain simply refused to process what her eyes were reporting. Because the man climbing those steps, in a charcoal 3-piece suit that made him look like he'd been carved from marble, his dark hair swept back to reveal the full, devastating architecture of his face, was the same man who had argued with a toaster on Wednesday and lost. The same man who'd brought her coffee every morning at 8:47. The same man who'd held her hand in a dark elevator and almost kissed her 4 separate times. The screens behind him lit up with his name, Kang Jae-won, founder and CEO. The room erupted. 300 people on their feet. Applause thundering off the walls. Caroline was clapping with tears in her eyes. Douglas, standing at the back, nodded with the quiet satisfaction of a man who'd kept a secret far too long. Jae-won reached the podium. The applause faded. His hands gripped the edges of the lectern, and Kira saw them trembling. "Good morning," he said. "For the past 5 weeks, I've been working alongside you, not from the executive floor, but from your floor. Your desks, your break rooms. I wanted to understand this company the way you experience it, the challenges, the frustrations, the daily reality of what it means to work here." His voice was steady, commanding, completely unrecognizable from the goofy rambler she knew. Then his eyes swept the front row. Found her. And every mask he'd been wearing crumbled. She saw it all in his face. The guilt, the terror, the desperate hope that she might understand, that she might forgive what he'd done. That the man on stage and the man who brought her coffee were the same person, and that person was begging her to see him. "What I found," he continued, his voice catching almost imperceptibly, exceeded every expectation. Diana grabbed Kira's arm hard enough to bruise. "Oh my God," Diana breathed. "Oh my God, Kira, that's him. That's your, oh my God, your coffee guy is the CEO." Kira stood. The movement was quiet, but in the front row it drew every eye. Jae-won stopped mid-sentence. She held his gaze for 3 seconds, long enough to communicate everything she couldn't say in words. Then she turned and walked out of the auditorium. Her heels clicked against the floor like a countdown. Behind her, she heard him say, "Excuse me," to 300 people, and then the sound of footsteps following. She was sitting on the floor between boxes of printer toner when the door opened. He'd loosened his tie. His hair was falling back into chaos. The CEO suit suddenly looked like a costume on a man who couldn't stop being the version of himself she'd fallen for. "Kira? 5 weeks." Her voice was eerily calm. 5 weeks. You looked me in the eye every single day and lied. "I know. I told you about my mother." The calm cracked. "I told you about losing her, about carrying her last words with me every day. I told you things I haven't told anyone, and the entire time, you couldn't give me the basic respect of telling me your actual job title." He looked like she'd struck him. "Everything I told you was real," he said, his voice raw. "Every conversation, every laugh, every moment I spent with you was the most honest I've been in years. You told me you worked in operations. I lied about my title. I never lied about who I am. Those are the same thing." "They're not." He stepped closer, his eyes wild. "I have been the CEO of this company since I was 25. My father had a stroke. I inherited a boardroom full of people who wanted to control me, an ex-fiancé who treats the company like her personal piggy bank, and a life where every conversation is a negotiation. Nobody sees me. They see the title, the money, the power. They see what they can extract." His voice broke. "And then you walked through those doors and you looked at me like I was just a guy in a terrible shirt. And for the first time in 5 years, someone saw, not what I own, not what I can give them, me." He pressed his hand to his chest. "I was selfish. I was a coward. I wanted to keep being that guy, the one who made you laugh, the one you chose before you knew what I was worth. You don't get to make that choice for me." Tears streaked her face. "You don't get to decide what I can handle. I know. I need you to leave." The devastation on his face almost broke her resolve. Almost. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll go." He reached the door and stopped. "I tried to tell you," he said, without turning around. "At the jazz club. I had my ID badge in my hand. I was going to show you everything. And then Vivian called and His head dropped. "I was afraid that once you knew, you'd look at me differently, and I couldn't bear it." The door closed behind him. Kira pressed her face into her knees and let herself break. He respected her silence. For 17 days, Jae-won kept his distance. No conversations, no appearances at her desk, no texts. But every morning at 8:47, a cup of coffee appeared on her desk. Black, 1 sugar, still warm. No note, no fanfare, just the coffee, placed there before she arrived, like a prayer left at an altar. She never saw him do it, but she knew. Day 3. She almost threw the cup away. Her hand hovered over the trash can for 10 seconds before she set it back down and drank it. Day 7. She noticed the cup was from a different cafe, the small one near the river that she'd mentioned loving once, in passing, during a conversation she thought he'd forgotten. He hadn't forgotten anything. Day 12. Diana found her staring at the cup with red eyes. "He's miserable," Diana reported gently. "His assistant says he sleeps at the office. He canceled 3 investor meetings last week, and he still makes that coffee run every morning. Rain, sleet, whatever. He's the CEO. He could have someone deliver it. But he doesn't. He goes himself." Diana paused. "Every single day." Day 15. Douglas stopped her in the lobby. 22 years in this building," the security guard said. "I've watched that boy carry this company on his back since he was barely a man. He's made mistakes. Lord knows he has. But I've never seen him love anything the way he loves you. And I've never seen him this broken. He broke himself, Douglas." "I know. The question is whether the pieces are worth picking up." Day 17. Barbara from accounting appeared at Kira's desk. This was unprecedented. Barbara didn't visit people. People were summoned to Barbara. "I need to show you something," Barbara said. "And I need you to pay attention, because I'm only going to explain this once, and then I'm going back to my yogurt." She placed a thick folder on Kira's desk. 17 years of financial records, Barbara said. Every questionable transaction, every shell company, every cent that Vivienne Laurent has siphoned from this company, I've been documenting it since before you were out of college. Why are you giving this to me? Barbara's expression softened. A geological event so rare that Kira nearly fell out of her chair. Because that man upstairs made a stupid, lovesick mistake, but Vivienne Laurent is going to use that mistake to take his company and burn it to the ground, and I've worked here too long and put up with too much to let that happen. She straightened. Also, he approved the new espresso machine, and it's the first decent coffee this office has had since 2011. I owe him. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Barbara said, he fought the board to approve your internship personally. 6 months before you ever set foot in this building, your application crossed his desk. He read your thesis, called it the most original financial analysis he'd seen in a decade, told HR to fast-track you. The floor shifted beneath Kira's feet. He didn't know he'd fall for you, Barbara added quietly. He just knew you were brilliant. Everything after that was an accident, the best kind. She walked away. Kira sat at her desk, staring at the folder, the coffee, the window view of the skyline that she now understood had been his doing. He hadn't chosen her as a target. He'd chosen her as a talent. And then he'd fallen, just like she had. She opened the folder and started reading. She didn't sleep for 2 days. Vivienne Laurent made her move on a Tuesday. The emergency board meeting was called with 24 hours notice, a procedural ambush designed to catch Jaewon off guard. Kira learned about it from Caroline, whose face was the color of old paper. She has the votes, Caroline said, pacing. She's been promising board seats and stock options to anyone willing to support a no-confidence motion. She's framing his undercover operation as evidence of instability, and she's using your relationship as proof of compromised judgment. When? Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Kira spent the night at her kitchen table with Barbara's folder, her laptop, and a pot of coffee strong enough to dissolve steel. By 4 a.m., she had built a case so airtight it could survive re-entry from orbit. By 7 a.m., she had documentation, timelines, account numbers, and a presentation that would make a federal prosecutor weep with joy. By 8:30, she was standing outside the executive boardroom in a coffee-brown blazer and a white blouse, holding a flash drive, and terrified in a way she hadn't been since the night her mother died. "Make me proud, baby girl." She opened the door. The room was a war zone disguised as a conference table. 12 board members, mahogany and leather, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing a Chicago skyline that looked painted. Vivienne Laurent occupied the head of the table like a general surveying conquered territory. She was devastating. White designer suit, crimson lips, the kind of beauty that functioned as a weapon. Her eyes tracked Kira's entrance with predatory amusement. Jaewon sat at the far end. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Shadows under his eyes, jaw tight, hands flat on the table as if holding himself together by force. When he saw Kira, something raw and desperate flashed across his face. "This is a closed meeting," Vivienne said smoothly. "Board members and executive staff only. Interns don't qualify." "Then it's fortunate I'm not here as an intern," Kira said, her voice carrying across the room with a steadiness that surprised even her. "I'm here as a representative of the company's finance team, with material evidence relevant to the proceedings." Vivienne's smile sharpened. "How touching. The girlfriend rides to the rescue. Ms. Laurent, I'd recommend focusing less on my personal life and more on the contents of this presentation. Given what's in it, you're going to need all the focus you can muster." A murmur rippled through the board. "Shall we proceed with the vote?" Vivienne said, turning away from Kira dismissively. "We have 7 votes confirmed. The motion to remove Kang Jae-won as CEO." "Before you vote," Kira interrupted, stepping forward, "I think the board should review some financial data." She plugged her flash drive into the room's display system. The screens flickered to life. Numbers, transaction records, shell company registrations, wire transfers. A web of financial deceit so intricate and damning that the room fell into absolute silence. "Over the past 17 years," Kira said, "approximately $47 million has been siphoned from Apex Dynamics through fraudulent vendor contracts, inflated consulting fees, and payments to shell corporations. Every single trail leads to a holding company in the Cayman Islands registered under a trust controlled by—" She looked directly at Vivienne. "You, Ms. Laurent?" The silence was nuclear. Vivienne's composure cracked. A hairline fracture, quickly sealed, but everyone saw it. "This is absurd," Vivienne said, her voice strained. "Fabricated data from a lovesick intern." "The data was compiled from internal accounting records, maintained over 17 years by your own head of accounts receivable," Kira said calmly. "Verified against bank records, obtained through legal channels. Cross-referenced with SEC filings that your shell companies were required to submit. Would you like me to continue, or would you prefer to read the summary I've prepared for the board?" She placed 12 printed copies on the table. Nobody moved. Then, slowly, one board member reached for a copy, then another, then another. Vivienne watched her empire crumble in real time. "I move to remove Vivienne Laurent and all implicated parties from this board," Jae-won said, his voice quiet and lethal, effective immediately. "All in favor?" Every clean hand rose. Vivienne stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed at Kira. "You're still just an intern playing at power." Kira held her gaze. "And you're a fraud playing at relevance. The difference is, I have a future here." Vivienne left without another word. The door closed. The board members filed out in stunned silence. And then they were alone. Jae-won crossed the room. Stopped an arm's length away. His eyes were red, his hands shaking, his entire body vibrating with something too big to name. "You saved my company," he whispered. "I saved our company. I work here." She paused. "Also, Barbara from accounting sends her regards. She wants a raise." "She can have whatever she wants. She wants the entire top shelf of the refrigerator." Done. They stared at each other across 18 inches of charged air. "I'm still angry," Kira said. "I may be angry for a while. I'll wait. No more lies. Never again. And if you ever hide your identity from me, or keep secrets, or decide that you know better than me what I can handle, you'll destroy me. Thoroughly and permanently. I know." "Good." She grabbed his tie and pulled him the last 18 inches. The kiss was 5 weeks of longing, and fury, and forgiveness crashing together. It was the printer room, and the elevator, and the jazz club, and every almost kiss finally becoming real. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. "I love you," he said. "I know." She closed her eyes. "I love you too. And I hate that I love you. Because you wore that horrible mustard shirt for 5 weeks, and I still fell for you. Which means my standards are genuinely concerning." He laughed. The real laugh, the one she'd described to Diana for 5 minutes. The one that sounded like joy without conditions. "In my defense," he murmured against her lips, "the shirt was strategic." "Nothing about that shirt was strategic. It was a crime against cotton." He kissed her again. She let him. The rooftop of Apex Dynamics at sunset was, Kira had decided, the most beautiful place in Chicago. She stood at the railing, watching the sky bleed orange and pink over the skyline, and felt her mother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. "Are you proud, Mom?" She thought she knew the answer. Footsteps behind her, the familiar rhythm. "There you are," Jaewon said, sliding his arms around her waist. "You missed the celebration." "What celebration?" "The one where the board officially approved the charitable foundation you designed," Barbara cried. "Barbara, I think the apocalypse is starting. Barbara and I have an understanding now. She terrifies me more than ever." Kira leaned back against his chest. He was still in his suit, but his tie was loosened, and his hair had surrendered to chaos. Her favorite version of him. "I have something for you," he said. She turned in his arms. He was holding a small velvet box in one hand, and a folded piece of fabric in the other. She looked at the fabric, her eyes widened. It was the mustard yellow polo shirt, the original one, coffee stain and all, preserved like a museum artifact. "What? Open the box first." She did. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single stone set in white gold. "This is a promise," he said, his voice steady, even as his eyes glistened, "that I will always tell you the truth, that I will always choose you, that every version of me, the CEO, the coffee guy, the idiot in the ugly shirt, belongs to you." He lifted the polo shirt. "And this is a reminder of the man I was when you first chose me, before you knew my name, my title, any of it. You chose this guy. That guy had a coffee stain the size of Texas on his chest. And you chose him anyway." His voice cracked. "That's the bravest thing anyone has ever done." Kira looked at the ring, then at the shirt, then at the man holding both, his heart in his hands, his eyes asking the only question that mattered. "Put it on," she said. "The ring? The shirt?" He blinked. "What?" "Put on the shirt, Jaewon." He stared at her. Then, slowly, a grin spread across his face. The same grin from the first day, the one that had started everything. He took off his jacket, unknotted his tie, unbuttoned his dress shirt, and pulled the mustard yellow polo over his head. It was still hideous. The coffee stain had actually gotten worse with age. He looked ridiculous. He looked perfect. "Now put the ring on my finger," she said, "so I can tell people I got engaged to a man in the ugliest shirt in North America." He slid the ring on with trembling hands. Then he kissed her, and the setting sun wrapped them in gold. And somewhere far below, Douglas the security guard looked up at two silhouettes on the rooftop and smiled. "About time," he said, and went back to his crossword. "Whew, I need a moment. I need this, Dals. Several moments. If this story had you laughing, crying, screaming, and clutching your chest, you better smash that like button, right now. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tap the bell so you never miss a story, and drop a comment telling me, what was your favorite moment? The printer room almost kiss? Barbara's secret folder? That mustard polo shirt proposal? I need to hear from all of you. Share this with someone who deserves a beautiful love story today. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.